Thanks for joining me today. This is Danny, and welcome back to my workshop. Today, we are going to take a look at mob souls. Now, Slender TT and I have been killing the Ender Dragon multiple times because we're getting ready to face the Chaos Dragon. And in order to kill the Ender Dragon, we've had to make ourselves these resurrection stones, which require mob souls. Now, of all the things that we've been doing with Draconic Evolution, the mob souls have proven to be the most difficult thing for us to get without a lot of manual interaction. Now, what we had been doing is going into the end with our Draconic Staffs of Power. Well, my Draconic Staff of Power and his Draconic Sword, and we would just sit there and we would look at a whole bunch of Endermen, and they would all come over by us. We'd be flying in the air, and they'd all come below us, and then we'd just give one hit, boom, and they'd all die. And that way we could get some mob souls. But now mob souls are extremely rare, so we would have to kill quite a few Endermen in order for this to happen. So what I decided to do was to set up some automation in order to get us some mob souls. Now, the mob souls are, as I said, they're an extremely rare drop that you get only when you're using a Draconic Evolution weapon, such as the Draconic Staff of Power, or the Draconic Sword, or of course the Wyvern Sword. So any Draconic Evolution weapon will get you mob souls, but they're extremely rare. But now there is an enchant called the Reaper enchant. You can see in my enchant list, the second one from the bottom is Reaper 5, which dramatically increases the number of mob souls that you get. So they're still pretty rare, but they're not nearly as rare as they would otherwise be. Maybe I'll post the numbers on the screen, what the actual values are, but what I've done is I've created, now if you've ever seen any of my mob spawning videos, this room will look pretty familiar to you. But I've made a few modifications. So what normally in a mob spawning situation, what I do is I have my spawners, my Ender IO powered spawners, and then in this case I also have a Minefactory reloaded spawner. I'm not going to get into the details of spawning. I did cover that in another video. But basically we want to be able to spawn our mobs and kill them not using a grinder, which is how I would normally do it, but instead using an autonomous activator and some Draconic Evolution weapon. In this case, I'm using the Sword of Wyvern because it's the cheapest and easiest to make. And I've given it, as you can see, the Reaper 5 enchant. I've also given it Sharpness 5 to make it of course more efficient, and I give it Looting 3 to get some more other drops, but the main thing that we really need here is that Reaper 5 enchant. Otherwise you're not going to give very many mob souls. So we're using the autonomous activator, and as you might already know, the autonomous activator kind of acts like a player. You basically give it some items in its inventory, and it will either right click or left click, in this case, with that item wherever it's facing. If we're doing regular mob grinding with a grinder, this grinder is going to collect all of the loot from our mobs. The autonomous activator has no such feature. So we're going to need another way to collect our loot. You can use a regular vacuum chest. What I am doing is I'm using a vacuum hopper, which acts just like a vacuum chest, where it'll pick up items. So if I throw a piece of steak in here or whatever, it gets sucked into the vacuum hopper and pulled into my item network, and it actually ends up in my AE system right there. But the nice thing about the vacuum hopper is that it also collects XP. So it'll collect the XP orbs in this room, and it'll pull them in, and it'll actually convert them to liquid XP, which we can then use to put in a tank or to put in our experience obelisk, which is actually what I'm doing right here. But of course we don't need to do that in order to get our mob souls, but as long as we're killing mobs, we might as well do something with the XP and make some use out of it. So now, unlike the grinder, which will kill mobs in a 5x5 radius, our autonomous activator is going to act just like a player that's just standing in one place. So it's only going to hit things that are right in front of it. So we're going to have to get the mobs over here. So what I've got are these open blocks fans. In the corners I've got 2 that are blowing in this direction, and then I've got 2 that are blowing in this direction. So if we turn these on, I'll demonstrate with myself. I will be the first victim that will watch. If I go in this room, anywhere in this room, I get blown in that direction, and then this fan ends up blowing me in this direction until I get hit by the sword of Wyvern that's in the autonomous activator. So as it turns out, my armor is such that it doesn't really hurt me, but for mobs, generally 1 or 2 hits, especially since we have the sharpness 5, it only takes 1 or 2 hits to kill most any mobs that we have spawning in this room. So a couple things that you're going to want to watch out for. Now you see I have this Cursed Earth here. Cursed Earth, if we turn out the lights, will spawn at a very high rate, and it'll spawn all kinds of mobs, which for free, you don't even have to use, you know, your RF to power a spawner or anything like that. And that sounds wonderful, right? But it's not. You don't want to use Cursed Earth because, as I mentioned before, the autonomous activator acts like a player, and creepers also see it as a player. It'll blow up, and it'll ruin all your stuff. So you won't, so that won't work out so well for you. So you want to make sure that you control what you're spawning. In this case, I'm spawning zombies because they're the cheapest, and I'm spawning blazes. And then I also have this Minefactory Reloaded spawner, which is spawning Enderman. So, and now Enderman, you do have to be careful about Enderman as well. You want to make sure that you can one-hit your Enderman. Because if they teleport away, they could of course do their little Enderman grief. So be careful about Enderman and creepers. And then the other consideration is that the Draconic Evolution weapons do not take damage. I mean, they don't have durability. They have a charge. So in this case, the sword of the Wyvern takes 1 million RF in total. Right now it is almost entirely full. It has 985,000 RF, and it will use that RF as it's hitting your mobs, and eventually it will run out of RF, at which point it will lose its efficiency. So over here we've got ourselves a vibrant capacitor bank. Now you can use any kind of capacitor bank or any sort of block that can charge items. And then we have item conduits connecting the vibrant capacitor bank with, actually let me grab out of here. I'm just going to grab a conduit. It doesn't really matter what it is, so that we can see through the through the facades here. We've got our autonomous activators back there, and we've got item conduits running in to the autonomous activator. Our mode is in-out, without any filters. And then the other end of that conduit, that item conduit, is attached to our vibrant capacitor bank. And in this case, we do have filters. We really only need filters on one side of this, depending on the complexity of your network. In this case, I have these two on kind of a separate network. They're using the Lime channel, which nothing else is using. And I have two basic item filters, one on the insert and one on the extract. The insert, I have a completely uncharged sword of Wyvern. So this item conduit will pull from the item network and put into the capacitor bank a sword of Wyvern that has 0 charge. We have our match metadata turned on. By default it says ignore metadata. We want to match metadata because we want to make sure it only grabs a sword if it has no charge. And we're whitelisting for the insert. And then for the extract, we have a fully charged sword of the Wyvern. Again, we're matching metadata and we're whitelisting. So what's going to happen is once that sword of the Wyvern is depleted entirely, it's going to get pulled into the vibrant capacitor bank where it's going to be fully charged, and then it's going to be extracted out of the capacitor bank and then put back into our autonomous activator. So this thing can run forever, and we never really have to worry about maintaining the swords or replacing the swords or anything like that, because it's going to do it all for us. So this is an entirely automated setup. Let's go downstairs and take a little bit of a look at how I have the wiring set up down there. There's really two main things we have. Well, okay, there are three main things that we have to worry about. One is power. Our autonomous activator needs power, as do, of course, our spawners. The other is the items, which we just looked at, and then the items being pulled out of our vacuum hopper. And then the third is redstone. Right now you can see the autonomous activator is off. There's usually a little animation in the front here. The fans are also off. I have these all on the same redstone circuit, and so that we can turn them on and off. And I put them together because these fans can be a real pain. If they're on and you're trying to work and stuff, they'll push you around, and it makes things kind of a pain. So it's a good idea to have those redstone controlled. So what I'm doing is I am using, and of course there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but I'm using these insulated redstone conduits, the Ender IO conduits. I like to use these for several reasons. One, because of course you can put them in the same block with other redstone or with other Ender IO conduits, and two, you can have multiple redstone circuits in the same conduit, and you simply just specify the color of the different circuits. In this case, I have these things all on a purple circuit. So we have purple going into this red alloy wire, which is touching all the blocks that the fans are on. The black blocks are the ones that the fans are on. So by flicking a lever that's also on the purple network, we'll turn those fans on. And it will also turn our autonomous activator on, because we have a redstone conduit going up to the back of the autonomous activator. Here's our vacuum hopper from the bottom. Now the vacuum hopper, if you've never played with these before, you can specify where to output your items. So this right here is our item output. So you just left click on the side that you want an item output, and then you right click and drag to move it around. And then the same thing for the XP output. So in this case, we've got our XP output down here. And then I've got some Ender IO fluid conduits that are pulling always active, extracting the liquid XP. And then over here I have item conduits that are always extracting, redstone mode always active. And then I have those conduits running into my item network, which has a bunch of filtering and sorting and pre-processing before it gets put into my ME system. But of course I'm not going to get into that today, because here's my autonomous activator, and there's the conduit connections. If we look at our redstone conduits, we're on the purple signal color. And then I happen to have a switch over here. I have all these switches for my different spawners that are all in different colors. This one's red. So let's demonstrate this. I can turn on my zombie spawner, my blaze spawner, this is my enderman spawner, whatever. And then I can turn this guy on. That turns on the fans and the... Oh boy, my doors are open. You can see they're getting sucked in. Actually, let's go in here so we can get a better view and hope nothing spawns in here. So as soon as they spawn, the fans blow them over toward the autonomous activator, where they get beat up, and you can see the XP orbs getting sucked down into the vacuum hopper. So let's take a look at this Reaper enchant. So you can, of course, you can just stick your weapon in an enchanting table and pray that you get a Reaper enchant. There's a couple different ways you can approach this. Now what's really cool about all the Draconic Evolution items or weapons is that if you select them, hit the minus key, and click on them, you get this little item inventory button where all of your enchants exist. So you can take the enchants out, you can put enchanted books in there, and it doesn't cost you any XP. So one of the things you could do is just take all the enchants out, and then you have an unenchanted sword, or in this case staff, and then you can stick it in the... Oh, actually that doesn't work with the staff. With the sword you can stick it in the enchantment table and get another enchantment. Now what I actually did is I used gold swords. I just made a whole bunch of gold swords, I went to the enchanting table, and I enchanted them all until I got a Reaper enchant. And then I brought them over to this Minefactory Reloaded Auto Disenchanter. Now, Draconic Evolution also makes an Auto Disenchanter. It's a little more expensive, but I think it has a few more features. But this Auto Disenchanter, you basically put an enchanted item up here, and it will give you, it'll pull the enchantment out of it. It'll actually randomly pull an enchant out of it, and it'll give you the unenchanted item back along with a book. Here we got our DK1 book, and then we have an unenchanted golden sword. So I ended up getting the Reaper 4 enchant. So then I went over here in my Bibliocraft typesetting table and printing press, and I duplicated the book. I took until I had 2, and then I combined them in an anvil in order to get Reaper 5. So that is it. This thing is totally automated. I can flip the switch, I can leave, we can go away and have a cup of coffee or go to sleep for the night and come back tomorrow, log off of the server, come back tomorrow, and we'll have a whole bunch of mob souls in our system. So right now I've got 10 of them, and we've already done 3 rituals, so this is working out pretty well for us. So if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Or if there's anything else that you'd like me to cover or demonstrate, let me know. Otherwise, click the like button if you enjoyed this and learned something from it. And thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.